Hi, my name is Mr. Lawrence Dawkins-Hall, and this is a continuation of a collective cachet or series of vignettes on different aspects of applying for the vocational award offered by the Royal Society of Biology of Chartered Biologists, denoted by the post-nominal C Biol. This vignette, along with the previous three, will be made available via the My Learning portal of the Royal Society of Biology website. So far, in vignette 1, we covered who is eligible to apply and the mechanics of applying via My RSB. In number 2, we looked at the benefits of applying, what is value added in terms of being C Biol over and above a member of the Royal Society of Biology per se. And in number 3, we took a deep dive into what is effectively the mainstay of your My RSB application, which is an exemplification of your working practices through the so-called competencies. Okay, so in this vignette, number 4, the penultimate vignette, we're going to talk about what actually happens when you've pressed that submit button. In other words, how is your application assessed? But before I do that, let me just revisit what constitutes somebody who is eligible to apply for Chartered Biologist Award. So it's someone who's a postgraduate, either from level 6 degree or a level 7 master's degree with 5+ years experience in a postgraduate environment. Membership of the Royal Society of Biology at MRSB or FRSB is a prerequisite, okay? And as I've just mentioned, you need to demonstrate through the competencies that we elucidated in vignette 3 that you can practice at level 7 with regard to your skills and knowledge in a professional workplace setting. So the crucial thing as a member of the Royal Society of Biology, and in conjunction with your excellent working experience, is that you can evidence those competencies. So ordinarily, that 5 years of experience will probably engender 1 to 2 years in a managerial type position where you've supervised projects and or other people in order to be able to effectively answer the competencies which look at those particular aspects of practice. So I want to just there again revisit equivalency for MRSB membership, a prelude to C Biol eligibility. So if we take two what you might call typical candidates who are eligible to apply for Chartered Biologist, one is a member of the Royal Society of Biology with 3 years experience at level 7 as a member of the Royal Society of Biology, and subsequently 2 years of CPD returns in their postgraduate management setting. Another alternative may be someone with a formal level 7 qualification. Okay, they are as a result a member of the Royal Society of Biology, but as yet have no CPD returns. That said, if you lack a formal level 7 qualification, a formal master's, it is still possible to actually become a member of the Royal Society of Biology and then transition to the award of Chartered Biologist. So that could be someone with a level 6 degree, okay, a level bachelor's degree, who is originally an associate of member of the Royal Society of Biology, and with 6 to 8 years experience in total in this case has become an MRSB. And at that juncture, with that additional experience, and it has to be said, you need to demonstrate that during your years in practice that you're actually working at level 7, even if you are not in a possession of a formal level 7 master's, then that is sufficient to be eligible to apply for the award of Chartered Biologist. So this there again expands on the idea of equivalency, that as a level 6 with 3 additional years of experience, a level 5 4 additional years of experience, okay, and even someone, to put it in relief, who has 10 years of postgraduate level 7 demonstrable experience with no qualifications, they can then apply to become a full member of the Royal Society of Biology, which is a prerequisite or springboard for becoming a chartered biologist. So having engendered that experience and become a MRSB, then normally you would expect to put in an additional 2 years at level 7 before applying to become a chartered biologist. However, there is a caveat to that, okay? And that's the fact that without, should I say, a formal level 7 qualification, in addition to your normal competency submissions that we've talked about in Vignette 3 via My RSB, you may, with the consent of the assessors, and they will look at your application, it may be that you're mandated to fill out an additional so-called equivalency report, okay, details of which can be found on the Royal Society of Biology website. However, to some extent, it really does depend on your own situation. You know, not one size doesn't fit all. So having looked at your application, and I say having, I mean the core registration team at the Royal Society of Biology, and having passed on your application to the 2 assessors that actually assess your application, if it's deemed that in those 5 to 6 years at level 6 you're actually working demonstrably at level 7, okay, then it may be that the equivalency report and the additional years is actually circumvented. In other words, it really is, there is a pro forma in terms of experience needed to become an MRSB, and then subsequently experience that's recommended for you to transition to a chartered biologist. But the bottom line is that if the assessors are actually not just happy with but impressed by, let's say, a level 6 graduate who submitted a chartered biologist return as an MRSB with 5 years experience, okay, and that demonstrates strong and unequivocal management attributes, then an additional equivalency report is not necessarily needed. And the same is true in terms of applying for MRSB. That extra experience compared to somebody with a formal level 7 qualification is a recommendation, but you may apply for and become an MRSB with demonstration of postgraduate experience at level 6 in a more managerial capacity. So the assessment pipeline, which is really the crux of this presentation, is as followed. Are you eligible to apply for C Biol? In other words, you are, as a minimum, a member of the Royal Society of Biology with 5+ years at either level 6 or level 7, as we've talked about, of postgraduate practice, engendering some managerial experience in order to be able to competently and confidently answer those competency prerequisites. And then in terms of your own application, I would plan proactively with pertinent examples. So basically what you need to do is take a look at the competency prerequisites, which are on the RSB website, and we've provided links to those. Reflect upon how your own experiences transpose to those situations and keep a running log of that. Okay. So compose your competency statements as a rough draft in Word, and then copy and paste polished examples which you're happy with into the My RSB portal. Okay. So having done that and completed all of your competency fields and additional requirements for a chartered biologist online, press the submit button. Okay. So having done that, your assessment, your chartered biology application, a decision will be rendered, either further information required or an unequivocal pass, in about 3 to 4 week period. Okay. And there are various iterations of pass and fail with concomitant support that you can go through. Okay. So in the first instance, you become a member of the Royal Society of Biology. Okay. And you then applied as an MRSB via the My RSB website. And the first thing that will happen is that the core registration team will just take a quick look. They'll scope your application to make sure everything's there, a brief scan to make sure all competencies are completed, application fee has been paid, a CV engendering work experience, and positive and suitable references. And then if the RSB core team is happy, they will then pass that on to 2 independent assessors who will focus particularly on your competence answers and make feedback to the candidate via the registration team in a standard pro forma form. Okay, so they will comment on the veracity and competence of your competency answers, which the RSB will communicate with you. Okay. So there are various scenarios in terms of pass or fail with concomitant support that you can have. So in terms of the competency prerequisites and sub-competencies thereof, in order to basically receive a pass, both assessors 1 and 2 must independently approve any competency statement or sub-competency thereof. That's then, if that is done for all of the sub-competencies, it's accepted and it's ratified at Chartered Biologists Quarterly Elections. So you become a Chartered Biologist and your name is put onto the register, okay, and published after ratification. It only takes one assessor with one sub-competency to basically not be happy, and that your application will get back to you. So what will happen in scenario 2 is that assessor 2, for example, will ask for more information on a particular sub-competency, and the candidate via the core team will receive detailed feedback from the assessors via the core team in order to approve the competency. And that may then, the candidate is given an opportunity to improve their answers and resubmit. And if the competency is approved, then a team will let the candidate know that in fact they've passed, if the second assessor is happy with the outcome of what has been added to the answer. A third scenario is that for one or more sub-competencies, more information is required for both assessors, and generally with competent assessment, the 2 independent assessors, although they're working independently, will generally sort of pick up on the same information for competencies. So then the assessors might ask for more detailed information, and that will be relayed to the candidate, and the candidate once again will be given an opportunity to improve or to clarify on assessor points. And then if both assessors are happy with what has been resubmitted, the application is approved. If not, it's rejected. Okay, and in that situation, if it's rejected a second time, it's independently reviewed by a third assessor, who will then, in conjunction with one or both of the other assessors, will look at the application and take it through the iterations that I've just described. Okay. So what are assessors looking for? This is how the assessors will appraise your competency answers, and by implication how you should write them in order to satisfy the assessors. So is your example clear and relevant? And remember, your assessors, one or both of your assessors, may not possess your specialist knowledge. So you need, as a candidate, to put yourself in non-specialist shoes and actually write an answer that's comprehensive to someone who doesn't actually share your particular specialist knowledge. Is the example therefore clear, detailed, but also sufficiently concise? And for each subcompetency, you want an answer that's about 350 words. Then go back and look at the section heading. Have you described what they have asked for? So in other words, you've written an answer that's about 350 words, okay? But do you feel, having written it, that it is consonant with the objectives or mission statements of the competency? Finally, the competency statements are about work that you do as part of a team or individually in order to address that particular competency prerequisite. So as such, it's meant to be autobiographical. In other words, your answers should be replete with the pronoun I and not talk about what you do as a we in the context of a team. Okay. Then the other thing that's quite critical is there depth to what you're saying, and also is there efficacy? And by that I mean, is there outputs? Okay. So assessors are trying to visualize what you did, and one thing that they will look for is that when you answer a particular subcompetency, that in effect what you've talked about is validated through your outputs. Okay, so it has to be an example that you've chosen where what you have done to address a situation or resolve a problem has actually led to resolution, and that you can enunciate that in your competency statements. Can you list your outputs? Okay. So as we've talked about before in previous vignettes, the way as a candidate that you should compose the prose of your answers is to conform with this acronym STAR. So outline the situation, the resolution of the problem, or whatever it is you want to talk about. Then the task in hand. Okay, what did you think about doing in order to resolve a situation or address a problem? What action did you take in terms of your methodology? And if you, for example, use specialist techniques and let's say acronyms, then define the acronym and give one or two sentences which give background to the rationale behind your task and action, so it can be comprehended by a non-specialist STEM assessor. Finally, as I say, you need to be able to demonstrate results, okay, that what you have done in terms of selecting a method, okay, the action you've implemented to address a situation has resulted in amelioration of that situation. Common points of failure for assessors who look at competency answers is too much relevant or superfluous detail. So you want to keep it concise, and you want to make sure that what you have written in terms of your 350 words specifically addresses the competency mission statements and is not embellished with team outputs, objectives, etc. Okay, so keep your answers perfunctory and relevant. As I say, it's meant to be an autobiographical exposition, so make sure your answers are replete with the pronoun I. It's okay when you actually compose your prose to introduce something you do in a team, so talk about we, okay? But in the subsequent 2 paragraphs where you talk about your action in order to resolve what you've introduced, in paragraph 1. This needs to be your personal input, so it needs to be autobiographical and include a number of I's. So feedback from assessors. So typically they may say things like, the lack of outcome from the meeting means the applicant has not proven their ability to take problem solving all the way through to the end. Okay, this outlines the problem and provides a way the applicant might resolve this. So assessors should include some examples of typical solution, e.g. focus on what you specifically did to improve an outcome, not what your team did. So this is really the sorts of comments that assessors that are doing their job can feed back to the candidate in order to get them to actually polish up their answers, and so with resubmission lead to a successful application. Okay. Let me just finish by saying that this has been the 4th in a series of 5 vignettes, and the final vignette, number 5, is actually the importance of CPD for retaining your chartered biologist postnominals. Thank you.